My video yesterday on the Eucharistic miracle in Delvin got a lot of comments and people were contacting me. There people in that text that I wasn't aware of, and then somebody says Jean Travis, who is this? And they said, look up the Martyrs book that Richard, Damien Richardson and Father and Dr. Michael Kinsella edited, which was written by Father Dennis Murphy, and the first martyr in there is John Travers, and it details the exact scene that I described there, and I'll just read it out for you. During the time he was examined 4 different occasions and put on 4 different kinds of torture, and being found faithful and steadfast, he was declared guilty of high treason by Cromwell and the other flatterers of the king. He was led out, as was the custom among the English, his hands tied behind his back and a rope around his neck, placed on a hurdle, and taken in this manner to the usual place of execution. When he reached the top of the ladder leading to the gallows, he prayed for pardon and heartily exhorted his bystanders to pray earnestly to God, the refuge of sinners, for the conversion and salvation of the king and of all the mad heretics who adhere to him. And then he exclaimed in a loud voice, "Is not for any crime, Christian hearers, that I have been sent hither from Ireland, my native country, but rather because I professed the Catholic faith, which I, like my ancestors, have drunk in their mother's breast milk, and also because I suppose to be the author of a certain work lately spread abroad among Catholics. The moment of my death is now close at hand, which will surely open the door to eternal life." And he goes on. Then he was hanged, cut down before life was extinct and quartered. A wonderful thing then took place. His right hand and his intestines were cast into the fire, and while other parts were reduced to ashes, the 3 fingers of his right hand, which he had raised aloft on the scaffold, were seen in a like position in the midst of the flames, and afterwards were found whole and fresh, as if they had never been cast into the fire. That's the text from Our Martyrs. Now, that text about his fingers not being able to be burnt can be found in that book that I referenced, that is published in 1610 in France. And if anybody wants a copy of that book, the PDF file, I have it. If you go back to the Eucharistic Miracles video and go to the first pinned comment, you can go in there and you can get the scanned copy and you can download it and do searches on it. It's really incredible. I don't understand exactly what is the connection between Venerable John Travers and the Bishop of Brady and the Nugents in Delvin, and why it's all like one paragraph into that book. But it starts off with John Travers, then it moves on to that priest secretly celebrating Mass in Delvin, and the bishop arriving with the Nugents, and the bishop seeing a chalice with a host in it and trying to take the host, and the host moving from one side of the altar to another, and then calling the priest who was able to take the host, and then this priest arriving 12 years later to France, and a Huguenot trying to stab the host, and it blood coming out of the host. I'm going to leave the text there. Maybe some good French scholar can come along and do a great translation, although it's not that difficult to understand the French, although grammatically and the spelling is slightly different, but we do seem to be able to translate it But this person that starts there in that page, John Travers, we do have a lot of details about him. We do know about Bishop Brady. We do know about the Bishop of Delvin. And we do know about the Bishop of Screen, William Nugent and Christopher Nugent. And we've lots of details about them. But I just thought that whole story was fascinating. Some people saying, being a bit cynical, oh, how can we prove this, or how can we verify this? I would say if people search these texts, they're going to come across these accounts. But we also have to remember the late 1500s and early 1600s, the amount of books that would be burnt. For example, this book that Venerable John Travers wrote. Do we have a copy? Can anyone find a copy? Anything that was pro-Catholic, it wasn't like it was going to be easily circulated, and a lot of these things could be lost in time, lost to memory. But I find it fascinating that Eucharistic miracle in that church that later became Anglican. This must have impacted people. One thing I found interesting, they do call Bishop Brady a heretic, and we were studying a bit of this. I did find that there was a lot of problems between Rome and the bishops, in the sense that not all bishops were actually heretics, but because they tried to work with the crown, work with England, trying to manage both sides, sometimes they ended up excommunicated by getting on the wrong side of the nuncio at the time. We see this with in the decades that precede this, in the early 1600s. And formally, these bishops weren't heretics as such, but they definitely struggled with the situation in Ireland. It was a very tense, very difficult situation. I don't know. Maybe other people can actually dig out the history of this bishop. He was Bishop of Kilmore, and he was Bishop of Ardagh, and he's buried in Multifarnon in 1607. Somebody can see if there's more history on it. But if anybody has details, I'd be fascinated to know. I do think people need to know about the history of Ireland. The reality is, Ireland remained Catholic, whereas England didn't. And there's a reason, there has to be more to this story, why the faith was left so embedded in Ireland. And I think these miracles do send us a sign from that period. Eucharistic miracles have happened across the centuries. They still happen. They happen in a time of crisis. They happen when, when Christ wants to show that he's really present in the Eucharist. And I think it was a sign for those men in that chapel. It was a sign for the bishop. It was a sign for the barons. It was a sign for the people present. And it was left recorded in that book. This priest went to France, like many priests that were exiled from Ireland abroad at the time. Maybe someday we'll actually find out the name of this priest, more details on it. Who knows? I suppose it might take time to trawl through records. As records get digitalized, when we can start to search in the records, because with this text it's easy actually to search for it. But anyway, I'll leave it there for people to read. And I do encourage people, if you want to get this book, Our Martyrs. I just thought it was interesting how John Travers is connected to this. There must be more to that story, but it's fascinating. God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.